Hello and welcome to the boot room ahead of what is sure to be another wild weekend in League One. Ipswich Town host Charlton Athletic this weekend, and things are all getting that bit more nervy, aren't they, Stu? The home line is in sight, and I'm starting to feel quite nervous about all of this.
Are you?
Yeah,
Mixture of excitement in there as well, though, right? It's
yeah, yeah, a bit of both, but definitely some nerves.
yeah. I guess Monday's result at Cheltenham has maybe sort of added to that. It was all going swimmingly, wasn't it? Ipswich felt like they were never going to drop a point again or concede a goal again the way they were going. That 4-0 win against Wickham on Good Friday certainly intensified that feeling. But just a little reminder that things aren't going to go smoothly in all Ipswich's way till the end of the season with that late equaliser for Cheltenham on Monday. So yeah, here we are, 6 to go. Ipswich back down in third, but very much in the thick of the automatic promotion race. It's still in their hands because they've got a game in hand on Sheffield Wednesday to come. So yeah, strap yourselves in. It's going to be a ride.
Yep, 6 cup finals, squeaky bum time. It's everything. And this weekend it's Charlton Athletic at home, the first of two back-to-back home games. Port Vale to come on Tuesday. Portman Road will be packed for both games, and the nerves are there, Stu. But yeah, you're right. There's some excitement as well because these games are huge. We've not been used to huge games for Ipswich at this time of the season. I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be an interesting game. I've got some thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is revisit the reverse fixture, which was a remarkable game of football, the likes of which I'd never seen before, and I don't think I'll ever see again. 4-4, 4 goals in stoppage time. Freddie Ladapo and Sam Morsey scored, I think, 90+1 and 90+4, respectively, to put Ipswich 4-2 up. Incredible scenes. Those goals came both from outside the box, by the way, came in front of a packed away end, and it felt like it was going to be one of those magical days that we talked about for years to come for all the right reasons. Somehow Charlton barely had a kick of the ball during that stoppage time. When we watched it back and analysed it, yet two big hoiks to the back post resulted in 2 goals and the game ending 4-4. Remarkable. And that ended up being the start of what we hope is Ipswich's sticky patch been and gone now in this season, where they ended up winning 4 out of 15, I think it was, in the league off the top of my head. That was sort of end of October, wasn't it, that Charlton game? So that might have just done a little bit of emotional damage at the time, psychological damage. Kieran McKenna talked about his players not dealing with the emotional side of that game towards the end of that match. But we hope that that's lessons learned, and this is a more robust, mentally robust version of Ipswich Town now, and an upgraded version as well. Obviously some new players come in since then.
Yeah, there's a weird parallel universe that we'll never know the outcome of. Where if that doesn't happen and Town hold on and win, where does the season go for Ipswich? Because things were looking great at that point. We'll never know the answer to that, and we're in the here and now.
There's a few of those, isn't there? I'm sure at the end of the season. Certainly, if it doesn't quite go the way we hope it does, I'm sure we'll look back on a few sliding doors moments. Certainly, like the harness goal against Barnsley that never stood, and Sheffield Wednesday's equaliser. But yeah, I think that would probably be the very top of potential sliding doors moments. Hopefully, we're not having to pick back through the season and worry too much about those moments.
Hopefully not. This time around, it's a Charlton team who are now 10th in League One. They're not going up. They're not going down. And if you want, you could file that in the dangerous opponents category because they're free. They're free of pressure, and they look like they've been enjoying that a little bit. 4 wins in 6, scoring a few goals. Not to be taken lightly, I don't think. Not that anybody will be taken lightly by any stretch at this stage of the season, but this isn't a slam dunk home win for Ipswich. I wouldn't say.
No, I guess they're in a similar bracket to Wickham, really, in terms of where they are in the table and the calibre of players that they've got. Some players that have got decent amount of experience there, with a smattering of some up-and-coming youngsters as well. Ipswich ultimately dispatched Wickham quite nicely after, once they got themselves going. won that game, and the hope has got to be that Ipswich's greater quality eventually shines in this match. But you're right, they're a team that seem to be enjoying the freedom of not having to worry too much about results at the moment. A change of manager since that 4-4 draw, of course. Ben Garner, who people will remember kind of whipping up the home fans into a frenzy after he got sent off in that game. He got sacked literally a few weeks later. He's now at Colchester, of course. And then in comes Dean Holden prior to Christmas, who is someone that Mark Ashton employed at Bristol City previously. And that needed a little bit of explaining to Bristol City fans, because I think they were expecting someone a bit more high profile at that time. He didn't last long at Bristol City. He went to Stoke for a little while, and now he's got the main job at Charlton. And big old turnover of players in January for them. So several of those players that featured in that game have moved on, and they've brought in a few new faces in January. One of which deserves a bit of a discussion going into this one, a man who might be starting as their central striker.
Yes, and he scored last weekend as well. It's taken a little while for him to get going in terms of goals for Charlton in his second spell there. But we're talking about Macaulay Bonne. Of course, as true an Ipswich fan as you will find, a man who enjoyed 3 or 4 months of just pure bliss in a town shirt at the start of last season before things tailed off. This will be a strange old feeling for him this weekend, won't it, coming back as a visiting player. He didn't get the Ipswich Town tattoo in the end, did he?
No, not that I'm aware of, but he made it pretty clear that he wanted to come back to Ipswich last summer. That call didn't come from Kieran McKenna. Ipswich ultimately went with Freddie Ladapo, and I've obviously brought in George Hurst in January as well. But sadly, Macaulay's Ipswich career did fade away in the second half of last season. It came as no surprise when Ipswich went down a different route. In the end, Macaulay saw a summer transfer deadline day move to Charlton collapse, which meant he was kind of sitting on his hands a bit in the first half of this season at QPR, but that move got resurrected in January, and now he's back at Charlton, a club that he's been at previously on a permanent basis. And it's taken him a little while to feel his way back into this team, probably due to that lack of game time in the first half of the season. Miles Leaburn has been scoring a few goals for them up front, so it's not guaranteed that he'll start this game tomorrow, but it just feels like he's just started to get himself going. He scored a couple of goals. I would put everything on the fact that we'll get one of those muted goal celebrations if he were to score back at Portman Road. If any player was to do the kind of pushing away his teammates and just gesturing to calm down, a muted goal celebration, Macaulay's going to be that guy.
And look, Portman Road is packed to the rafters, and I'm sure plenty of them in there will be his friends and family as well, who may also have to try and temper their reactions to certain things. They'll all be Ipswich fans, but they're Macaulay Bonne fans too. Scott Fraser in the team, of course, an early signing if the new era, an early departure as well. But the player I really like in this Charlton team is Jesserin Raksaki, who I feel sure will be playing at least Championship football next season with somebody on loan from Crystal Palace.
Maybe even Ipswich, and his name has been mentioned with them on more than one occasion. Read into that what you will. I guess his profile, his age, his attributes, he's dynamic, he's direct, would tick a lot of the Kieran McKenna boxes. So if Ipswich can get promoted, I'm sure he's a name that will get linked to them again, because you would imagine Palace will want to get him in the second tier next season via a loan. So who knows? There is a third Ipswich player on the books of Charlton, and that's Matt Penny, but he'll obviously won't be able to face his parent club. Even if he was, I don't think he'd be featuring in this game. It sounds like after having a very good first half of the season at Motherwell, it's been a bit more of a tale of frustration since he's come down to the Valley. He's not been in their match day squads of late. They're playing Terrell Thomas out of position at left back. He's normally a centre back. He's playing ahead of Matt Penny at the moment. So I know that Dean Holden talked about Matt Penny sort of struggling to settle there so far. So not quite happening for him, but obviously he's he's not really a talking point going into this one because he couldn't play anyway. But Fraser's an interesting one, given that Kieran McKenna's comments about him being desperate to leave because he wants to go somewhere to be the main man. When he went to Charlton last January, he's starting to get a few goals and assists for them, and I'm sure he's someone that will come back to Portman Road with a little bit of a point to prove as well. If Macaulay Bond's not celebrating if he scores, I think Scott Fraser certainly would.
Yep, that's the other side of the coin. Good player, but just never found his place at Ipswich. That's Charlton. More of interest to us is Town, and I'd suggest there's probably just one real talking point in terms of team selection, probably, and that's whether Nathan Broadhead's good to come back into this side in place of Marcus Harness. He missed Monday with an ankle knock, and if he's fit, he'll play, surely.
Yes, and we'll find out a bit more when we speak to Kieran McKenna in his pre-match press conference on Friday afternoon. At the moment, we don't know. It sounds like it's a little bit more than just a minor knock. They talked about he first got the injury away at Derby, where he got clattered in front of the dugouts and rolled his ankle, played on for a little while in that game and came off. Then took another kick to it, the same ankle, in the following game. And Kieran McKenna talked about there being significant bruising there, and obviously then didn't play. Didn't play on Monday, wasn't in the squad at all. So hopefully he's okay, because I thought Ipswich lacked a little something on Monday without him. He is the X factor. He has been a big part in this upturn in form and this winning streak I think that Ipswich have been on. He's looked a really quality player, and I think even when he came back from scoring on his debut with Wales, there was an extra swagger about him. You'd have backed him to have taken that chance, certainly, that fell to Marcus Harness in the first half at Cheltenham. So let's keep everything crossed that Nathan Broadhead is good to go again.
Yeah, and if he's not, Harness, as you say, got the start at Cheltenham, but Kyle Edwards came on at half-time in that game and made a difference to Town, didn't he? So every chance that if Broadhead isn't good to go, we could be talking about a start for Kyle Edwards, or even someone like Shawnee Aluko coming in from the cold potentially in that position.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Shawnee suddenly went from not making matchday squads to going into the team, but it's not impossible because it's happened before under Kieran McKenna. But I think that's almost with half an eye on the future now, that Shawnee is probably not someone that's going to get a contract in the summer, and that's why it's kind of been Harness and Edwards playing back up to those support forward roles at the moment. Edwards certainly looked the more lively of those two players out of Harness and him last weekend, but Kieran McKenna was at pains afterwards to say that he thought Marcus Harness had played his part in setting up the game in the first half. Difficult conditions, wind against, centre-halves coming through the back of him. Yes, he missed that chance. He was a little bit loose on the ball, but then Kyle Edwards came on in more favourable conditions. Ipswich were playing downhill, wind at their back second half. So he certainly has a lot of faith in Marcus Harness. Even when he's dropped out of the team, he's always been getting on the pitch as a substitute. He's been involved one way or another in most games this season. It'll be very interesting to see who he thinks is better suited for the opposition on Saturday out of those two if Broadhead's not fit.
This is probably a good point to take a little pause and take a look at some key stats heading into this weekend's game. Okay, there's some key stats heading into the weekend. Some other key points to make heading into this round of games is obviously the promotion rivals and what they're up to. Sheffield Wednesday top the table on 84, Plymouth next 83, Ipswich then 82, Barnsley 4 points back. And some interesting games. The quirk of the fixture list means that all of these sides are away while Ipswich are at home. Sheffield Wednesday at Burton, Plymouth, most interestingly in my mind, at Exeter in a pretty fiery Devon derby at lunchtime. We'll know their result going into Town's game. And then Barnsley are at Forest Green, where, of course, everybody should win that game at Forest Green, shouldn't they, Stu? Apart from Sheffield Wednesday. So we can't take anything for granted on these fixtures list. And I think it's fair to say that every round from here on in is going to have its twists and turns. We'll all have our eyes on what's going on elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah, apart from the players, and I'm sure in-house that the mantra has been the one game at a time and treat every opponent with the respect that they deserve, and they'll have done their analysis on Charlton going into this one. We've mentioned a few of their players in there, a team that's started to get a few results that will be looking to finish in the top half. For anyone who's turning up thinking, this is going to be another easy day at Portman Road, and just like Wickham, they'll get swept aside. This could be a tricky match, and as always, it feels like the first goal is pretty vital. If Ipswich can start well and get their noses in front, backed by another sold-out Portman Road crowd, you would back them and you would fancy them, wouldn't you? But it's not always as easy as that, is it?
It's certainly not, and a few teams they've all found that over the last few weeks that none of these games are going to be easy for any of them. Let's skip on to some predictions. Stu, I'm going to give you mine first this time. I think Town are going to edge this. I think it's going to be tighter than we maybe fear. 2-1 Ipswich for me is what I've got written down.
I've not even thought about a prediction till you've just asked me, Andy. We've gone a bit earlier on this video, so we haven't done a podcast. We haven't done any other bits of written content around this one. Do you know what I would take? With glee, I would take a nice 1-0 in this football match. Get back to a clean sheet. Find a way to win. I should just grind something out, even if it takes a bit of patience. If you have to ride out, some ways getting early goals and romping to victories is all well and good, but I think maybe for a bit of team spirit and just to be able to prove to themselves that they can grind these things out, and if the crowd gets a little bit nervy and anxious at a point in the game, they can find a way to win. So, I'll say 1-0.
Nervy. I think the stage of the season where we talk about it's like results are all and good, but performance levels are all. It doesn't matter about performances now, does it? All about the result. Hopefully we're both right. Hopefully there's 3 more points on the board for Ipswich Town, and find out with us over the course of the weekend. Follow the game with us, and hopefully it's another positive weekend.